Welcome to the Poetry Podcast with A, an Amber Michelle's work production. In this series, The Pop-Up, our mission is to pop up in the community to connect with writers, authors, and poets. Melissa Ferrer Civil, thank you so much for joining us on the Poetry Podcast with A, and specifically being on this series. So this series is called The Pop-Up. So we pop up in the community talking to writers, poets, authors of all kinds, and we pop up in a unique location that is specific to that author. So just start out by telling us where we are today.
Yeah.
And what this location means to you.
For sure. So we're at Charlotte Street. I'm currently serving in my second year as a studio resident at Charlotte Street. Charlotte Street is a foundation that provides artist resources. So they have studios for all kinds of artists, performing artists, visual arts, writers. They also do events. They do funding, right? So they have grant resources such as the Rocket grant and other grants. Like the generative or performance art grants. And it's special to me because I don't know. I feel like every artist needs a space, right? Like a space to go a little crazy, a space to like where they're free from prying eyes, a space that's free, that they don't have to pay to be there, and a space that they can really like make their own. And for me, Charlotte Street provides that. So yeah,
it's so beautiful too. I don't think the camera can actually see this, so I'm just gonna paint it, especially if someone's listening. Such open windows with a good little view of just some trees, and you can't really see downtown, but it's right there. Yeah. It's just beautiful. Yeah, I have like the better view. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I see it all the time. So also in my studio, what I love about it is like I can just stare out my window and just be there, especially when it's a flowering season, right? So when the leaves are there, the flowers are blooming, and I can just like see the like hummingbirds passing by and the bees, and
because you have a little like flower garden,
yeah,
and the trees are starting to change. I know it's kind of early, but you can start to just see like a couple, like I'm even looking at these trees out here, like you can start to see like the orange yellow kind of coming into the green. So it's a really beautiful little window you have in your space.
I love it. And I like go outside and have my little smoke break and like
nice.
and then sit, and just like kind of like sit and ponder, and I just love it. I love it.
It really curates a writer's
vibe. And we're right in the middle of the city, right? So it's like there are buildings around us, but there are so many trees that you can feel like you're in a little like secluded area.
It does feel secluded, especially where you're at. Okay, so you said that this space kind of like is for those writers that have just go crazy.
Yeah.
Did you ever have like a crazy moment
in my space? Okay, I have a dream, right? I have a dream about my writing process, and it's one in which I got to live out this dream, not in this space, but I did a residency in upstate New York called Bethany Arts Community. And residencies, let me just tell you, they're the way to go. I love a residency. So they provided me a space that is slightly bigger than my studio here at Charlotte Street, and I had a rolly chair, and I had printed out all my poems and put them on the wall, and I could like kind of like dance into the poems, like feel into the poem. I really like embodying the words that I write, so like that's like a continued process that I would like to continue with. I think here I haven't really allowed myself the full freedom to just go a little actually
you're like it's coming.
In this room, actually, because sometimes I'm here alone, none of the other residents are here. I was reading and I was like, and I don't know if you ever are reading or writing but then feel a sudden like stifled energy, like it's not coming or you're not receiving in the way that you would like. So I was like, you know what, I need to just like listen to some music and
Mm-hmm.
dance. I just need to dance right now. So I got up and I cleared the space, and I kind of just turned this space into my own. This is like, we're in the common space right now,
Yeah.
where like other residents used to. There's a little kitchen over here, but I literally just danced, and it was so funny because when I started, no one was here, and then like as I was dancing,
You got an audience.
yeah, like one of my friends who's a resident here, Juan, came in, and he was like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh."
Hey.
I'm fine. It's good.
So your thing is dance.
Yeah, I love dancing. Yeah.
What how often do you do it, like in your own space mainly?
Yes.
Or do you like go somewhere?
I mainly do it in my own space.
Yeah.
But recently my friends have been dragging me outside, which I love. I say dragging, but come on. It's great. I'm not usually very much of a club goer, but like there's this cute little club in Kansas City, and this is not supposed to be advertisement for them, so but I'm gonna still say their name because I really like
Fuck
it. Yeah. But in the Lowest Ferns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's such a cute little space. And so like my a couple weekends ago we went out, and that was the first time I went out dancing in so long, and I realized how much I missed it. Like just dancing among other people, you know.
Totally.
Like, yeah.
No, that place is cool. I know a lot of people that kind of go there. I haven't been there yet, but I'm also just not the same as I once was being pregnant. I'm just like, nah, I'm in bed at like 7 or 8. Like it's bad. But that's cool. That's like a little outlet for you.
Yes, definitely.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so another reason why I just feel so honored that you're on the podcast today, because of this year for you.
Yeah.
Being the first poet laureate of Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
I was watching, just like doing a little research about how you got this, and how I just didn't even realize the magnitude of how official it was. Like seeing Mayor Lucas award you this and give you this honor, it literally brought tears to my eyes. I'm not even kidding. I was sitting in PT's watching the 15-minute YouTube video and I was just like, this is so powerful. Like this is really making a change in the community. So I'm just so curious of like, how did that moment feel? And just your emotion there. You looked fucking swag as shit. Like you were so cool.
I do love to swag sometimes. You know, here's a little context. I truly don't like giving any part of my insides to like institutions, right? Like I don't like the idea of like oh, I know this person, so I feel good about myself, or I was honored in this way, so I feel good about myself. I just like to feel good about myself, you know.
Yeah.
That way I don't have to like chase something, you know. But I cannot lie. When I found out I got poet laureate, in like I was at school actually, when I like got the text, and I was watching some friends reading, and I couldn't sit still. I was like trying to pay attention to my friends, but my insides were like this. You know what I mean? And so that day of the appointment, actually, I have a relationship with the mayor and City Hall in a different capacity already from being an organizer, right? And it was very strange because like, you know, when you're an organizer, the mayor's not really your friend, right? The mayor's the person that you're trying to like get to do things, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's very different to be on the other side of things where you're like, no, you're being honored by City Hall. You're not fighting City Hall. You know, so that was different and interesting. But then I think the most powerful moment for me during that appointment was actually, last year, this year, I don't know years anymore. But we got through Casey Tenants, one of our comrades, when one of my like dearly beloved closest friends, Jonathan Duncan, was elected into city council. And I worked on his campaign. I was the director of communications for his campaign.
Is this the one who got a little choked up?
Yes, exactly. So the most powerful moment for me was standing next to Jonathan when he was talking about me and recognizing that this human being loved me so much. And like, I think I I don't I'm not trying to speak for all of us, but I think a lot of us can connect with this feeling of like, we go through our struggles, right? We go through uh the hells of hells, truly and honestly. And it's not that we want other people to experience it, but we just want other people to know, like,
Yeah.
this has not been easy, right? And in that moment, Jonathan was crying because he knew what I've been through, right? And he knew, and like in a way that even I couldn't like be present to in that moment, like he knew like what an accomplishment this was for me, given even my most recent years, you know what I mean? And so like for me, that really like grounded me into the space I was in, into the position, into what it meant for me. And yeah, and you said like, yeah, I had no idea that it was such an official thing. Yeah, me neither. Like, well, that's not true, but like I really don't put stock in institutions, right? So like like even today, like in these days, like people will talk to me and then be like, yeah, I forgot you were the poet laureate. And the reason they forget is because I don't like carry it with me like, oh, I'm the poet laureate.
Like you don't have it on a name tag.
Yeah. I mean, some of my friends may call me Madam Poet Laureate, but like that's just between us.
Well, it's funny you say that because like even in your bio on your website, it's like one of the last things you say about yourself. But typically that would be something you'd say like the first thing.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of interesting. I don't know if you've noticed that you did that. It's probably not even purposeful, but it's just like you added it just like, this is now on my resume. Like,
and it is a good, I will say, it is a good thing to have on one's resume.
Yeah. Okay. So for people that may not know exactly what a poet laureate does, because you are the first of Kansas City, Missouri. I think there's been.
Yeah, there's like a Missouri poet laureate. There's
Kansas, but not Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of people that listen to this are Kansas City, Missouri, so they may never have heard of a poet laureate. So, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like this official appointing of the poet that is recognized to spread the word of poetry. And you're just kind of promoting arts in this field more, kind of are getting recognized to go on certain events and speak, moderate, things of that nature. Has there been any like special events that has been brought upon?
Yeah, so
or what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So as far as events go, you know, it's so funny because I just did an event this past week, and I am the wrong person to be poet laureate because I will tell you the honest truth of everything.
No, that makes you poetry is honest. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, I know. But like, you know, as far as events go, you know, it's kind of like a situation in which, you know, City Hall has an event and then someone's like, the poet laureate should be here. So then I get a call like the day before the event, and then like, can you be at this event tomorrow? And I'm like, okay.
Like, I can't say no.
Yeah. So there's that, but there's also so much more, you know, like at the beginning of this appointment, people would ask me, what does the poet laureate do? And I really like didn't know. Like I didn't. Like I was like, that's a very good question. But through talking with other poet laureates, I'm part of a Facebook group actually of like Black poet laureates from around the nation.
Cool.
And through talking with them, and I'm also like I'm going to Portland, Maine in October to sit on a panel of Black poet laureates for the Maine Literary Arts Festival. And and talking about our position. The understanding that I've come to was like, actually, I'm the poet laureate and I'm just doing what I've been doing, right? Like, and it's like, it's understanding that a poet laureate is a servant to the community, right? It's understanding that, yes, exactly what you said, spreading the awareness of poetry, what it can do, like providing, to me, poetry is a tool for, I've been using the word selfing, right, as a verb, which is like coming into oneself, knowing oneself, defining oneself, right? Poetry is a tool for that. And then but also there's this like third thing, right? And it's like, and this is where like the organizer comes in, right? And it's every poet laureate that I know has like a passion project, right? Like something that they're doing for the community that is actually just beyond poetry, just beyond art, even a little bit. And I think the reason for that is because, at least from where I stand, like poetry, as you just said, poetry is about being honest, right? And I think a lot of poets, when they hit the page, they're hitting the page for themselves, but then there's a moment where you're hitting the page because you know others are listening. And as you're saying what you're saying, you're hoping to pass on some sort of message that can save a life, right? Or that can turn someone in a different direction, right? And so I think there's the like real desire for a better world that lives in most poets, and that's why we write, right? So I think with being the poet laureate, like the third thing is the ways in which my poetry walks off of the page and into the streets, right? Into community. And so that looks like, we talked about this a little bit, of Nation in Exile, but that also looks like yeah, it looks like, oh, when I go do a poetry workshop, I start a lot of poetry workshops like, I'm not here to teach you how to do poetry. And then I proceed to talk about how poetry is a tool just to get on the inside, right? Just to say what you need to say. And that's what I'm about.
Like when you're facilitating a
Yes,
workshop.
exactly. When I'm facilitating a workshop, they're not really craft workshops. They're more like community-based, socio-emotional learning workshops and things like that.
Because you're like, there's poetry inside of you already.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
I know. So I can find little nuggets of poetry inside of so many pieces of work. You know, it's not like poetry is poetry. Like it can be found in all different types of way to me.
Yes.
Like I feel like you can find it in music, like
yes,
of course, but just so many different
Yeah.
elements.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, throughout this whole process, first off, when did you get appointed?
February of this year, 2024.
Okay, so in February 2024, does it end, or can you
Oh.
or what is, I mean, 2025?
2026.
Got you. So
Yeah.
it's a 2-year.
Yeah.
So cool. So do you
Yeah.
feel like you've been able to have more access to
Ooh,
events? Like, did that ramp up?
Yes. And that's, I think on a personal level, if we're being very honest, I am so grateful to be the poet laureate of Kansas City, Missouri, because this little girl really needed it, right? Like, because this little girl, I don't have a typical job, right? Like a job where someone else is my boss. And to many, that sounds like a dream. And it is. And also it's like out of necessity for me, right? I'm very open about my life, and if you look anywhere about my story, you'll know that I've like suffered bouts of psychosis and like am on the schizoaffective, or my challenges live on the schizoaffective spectrum and all of these things like this. And so for me, these institutions actually are not good for me because like they induce psychosis for me. So around the time of being appointed, I was like in prayer, and I was like, oh God, I need money, and I might have to try to put myself at the mercy of these institutions once more and get a job, right? And I was really lamenting that, right? I was really like, dang, I don't want to do this. And there's other reasons too, like there's the personal reason, the personal health reason, but then there's the like political reason. I really don't believe in like participating in the world as it is, and I try to participate as little as possible, and then like kind of carve my own way to like into spaces and the cracks in between. That's like how I move, right?
Well, reading your book, especially like the economy piece,
yeah,
because you're very involved in the community piece.
Yeah. So to me, I separate the world and life, right? Like to me, life is this, right? Like us speaking, this is life, this is what's beautiful, right? But then you introduce like the systems and the institutions that we currently have at play. I'm not going to say all institutions are bad. I'm not going to say all systems are bad, because I think we do need systems to like function. But like when you look at what exists, those like those rooted in racism, rooted in like gender like stuff, and all of these things like that, like they're not healthy for us. They just aren't. Capitalism's not good. But we can that's a whole other podcast. But like,
say that for a different day.
Yeah. But like yeah, I think where was I going? I lost my train of thought because
I was talking about how like did this ramp up events for you, and what did that look like?
Thank you. So yeah, so I started getting DMs. We love a DM. I love a DM that's like, will you do this thing? We'll pay you. Like, love that.
So that started happening more.
Yes, definitely.
So I'm just curious hearing you talk. So this Poet Laureate, you don't get paid though.
So I got an honorarium.
Does that involve money?
Yes. Okay. Yes. At the top of the appointing, that's already gone. You know, like that's
of course, yeah.
It's a small little stipend, but I appreciate it. I was able to pay rent for a few months and do some things, so that was good. But yeah, got paid at the top, and then the rest is just like if I get an opportunity or something like that, I can get paid for that. If I do anything with the city, I don't really get paid for that since the honorarium kind of covered that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that is still just such an amazing place and award to be. What do you feel like got you there? Like, did you apply? Were you like, how were you chosen for this? Or like, what do you think, what series of events in your life led you to this appointing?
That's a really good question. The first big reason, the biggest reason, the most essential is God, right? Like, honestly, life is a series of events that one cannot plan or control, and what we do control is very small. And I think, yeah, I would not have gotten it if I was not on the path that I'm on in my faith. But I do believe like a more material thing is like, yeah, I've lived here for 6 years, and I've been a poet for 20 years, and and I'm not just a poet who just writes poetry, but I'm like an organizer. I'm deeply rooted in my community. And I'm like, I do like serve, right? Like I'm always here for people. You know what I mean? If you, the other thing, at least it's in some of my bios, is like, I'm a friend, right? Like that's ultimately, if I could just get paid for being a good friend, I'd do that, right? Like, but I mean, I'm still gonna be a good friend, but you know, but like, yeah, I think my aspect of being a busybody, not really a busybody, but like a little bit of everywhere, kind of got me into this position of Poet Laureate. I actually wasn't going to apply because they're actually, and you know this, you have this podcast, so you know this, there are so many amazing poets in the city, right?
There really is.
Like so many people who deserve to be in this role. Poets who are not just poets, right? Poets who are like in their community. I know you had like Sherry Hall on here the other day, and like these poets are not only writing, but they are participating in their community, doing everything in their power to help people, right? And I think that's all it takes to be a Poet Laureate. Just your complete and total dedication. But like, you know, yeah, so I think it's that aspect of just like.
So you did have to apply though.
There's an application process. This is really good. Thank you for getting me on track because I am that person who will go all over the place.
That's why I'm here, girl.
But yeah, no, there's an application process in Kansas City. The way they do it, it's a self-nomination process. And then I'm pretty sure the mayor chooses it. Ultimately. But yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel like I've sent you a message before that, but officially in person saying this to you. So I saw that you had an event at the Greenwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I really tried to go because I'm so close to that neighborhood. But that was one of my days that I was just like not feeling well.
I hear you.
Because I even RSVP or like on the Eventbrite or whatever. But I've just like that was during my first trimester and I was so sick.
Yeah.
That it was hard for me. But I wanted to hear about it because was that like a celebration night that you hosted?
Are you talking about the Poet Laureate and Friends one? Or the me and Calvin one?
I don't know. I didn't know you had two.
Yeah, I had two. So
there was one that you really promoted though.
Oh. What do I do with my life? I don't remember.
Like people in the news were interviewing you. I felt like, or someone interviewed for it.
I really feel like an idiot right now. I'm thinking this is like the Poet Laureate and Friends one.
I think it was that one. I do think Jose Faust was on it.
Okay, yes. Then that's definitely the Poet Laureate and Friends.
Yeah, so I wanted to just because I love that space.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, Greenwood, beautiful.
Yeah, and I saw you read there at the book launch that I hosted.
Yeah. And that was my first time in that space. Was your reading?
Really?
Yes.
And then I saw you. That's why I wanted to go to yours because that space just like cultivates such an energy.
Yes.
And a holy one.
Yes.
And I know that's so your vibe.
Yes. Yes.
So I wanted to ask about that night and just because it seemed like so special.
Yeah, and it was like I love being surrounded by talented, integritous, authentic people, kind, loving, generous, And when you get that many poets like that in a space, it's only going to be magic. There's nothing else that can happen, There's nothing else that can happen because who did we have? We had Jose Faust, we had Abby Bland, we had Bob Sikora, we had Glenn North, we had John Hypocrisy Lewis, we had Christina Santiago, we had who else did we have? I know we had Keisha Mills, myself, and Jessica Ayala. And like
impressive you named all those.
I love them. These are people.
Sorry for the one that didn't get named that we forgot.
I love you too if there's someone I'm missing, but I think
probably not.
I think I got it.
Just teasing.
But no, it was like when I curate events, I'm doing like energy work, really. I'm doing spiritual work. And what do we say? What does Genesee say? The vibes, right? Like I'm working in the vibe space, right? And
it's not an easy thing to do.
Look, it isn't. It takes the whole body. It takes the whole and I can and then like things happen that night that you can't plan for, right? Because it's always the thing. There's this poet, Asia Sampson, who says, it doesn't matter if you're performing in front of 3 or 300. It's about having the same conviction in your words, right? Because like you never know who's in that space and who needs the words that you have. And I know every person was touched in that room that night, at least by one of us. It was amazing night. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And so that kind of like kickstarted everything that's been going on for you this year. But you also have been doing a lot of like, I know on that video that was the appointing, you talked about like your planned programming and doing events like this. So I was curious what that was, and maybe it's kind of what we talked about before, kind of off mic, that you can kind of give a nod to. But what is your planned programming looking like for you in the future of it?
So I'm actually really excited because we're starting a new thing. So a nation in exile. I'm gonna give the little as
Yeah.
concise as possible. So a nation in exile is arts and organizing event series that's based in the concept of, or just the observation that we are a nation of exiles in exile, right? We are exiled from ourselves. We are exiled from each other. We are exiled from the land. We are exiled from our cultures. And then there's the very physical, like political state of being literally an exile from your home country, right? And my big question is, what does it take to return home? Who is doing that work of bringing us home, and how do we get there, right? And this kind of touches on from like mental illness to relations, like neighbor relations and stuff like that, community, civic health, these kinds of things. So what we do, the materiality of it, is we put on these events that are in partner with local social justice or community building organizations in order to raise awareness for the organizations that are doing the work of tending to our home with the people who do the work of tending to our insides, artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and we are starting a new thing next year, which is very exciting. And I really feel it melds with my poet laureate status now at this point, which is called Melanated Measures.
Mm.
Yeah,
The
it is.
alliteration.
Yeah, we love alliteration.
Yes, we do.
So Melanated Measures will be a visiting writer series. At least that's how it will begin. That happens every other month, and we will invite writers, established writers of color, into Kansas City to give like these small salons, right? Intimate gatherings in partnership with Black and Brown Bookstore. And it will be both like a serve materially as a fundraiser for both the Nation in Exile and Black and Brown, but also it will, there's this I'll try to put words to it since it's my job.
Mm-hmm.
In organizing, we talk about the fact that there are three faces of power. One of the faces of power is something called narrative power.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that means, what are people thinking is the reality? Like, what are they thinking the reality is, right? So, like, for instance, because of Casey Tennant's, when I say housing is a human right, most people don't question that. That wasn't always the case, right? There's still people who are like, "Oh, you're homeless, you probably deserve it," right? And no one deserves to be homeless. That's just, it's preposterous to me that anyone would even think that, right? Um, so that's narrative power, right? When you start changing how people collectively think about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Melanated Measures is an event in which we bring writers of color into Kansas City to plant the seeds of narrative change within our city, thinking towards liberation, right? The thing I know to be true is that in this current times, the people who are writing about liberation are the people who need it most, which are marginalized individuals, right? And so to stir up the pot in Kansas City, to get us like riled and ready, and just like have us thinking more communally, more holistically about what life is. We're going to start this visiting writers series, and it's going to feature writers like Philip B. Williams, Ibtisam Barakat, Dinesh Smith, hopefully. I mean, send some texts, do what I can. But like, just like, lots of different writers, poets. So that's our major thing that we're looking towards in the new year. And then hopefully a redo of what happened this past month, this past August, next August, an Abolition Academy, where we work with a couple of organizations to put on a visual arts exhibit and some programming around abolition and community building, where people can get plugged in and involved. So yeah,
That's such a, sorry.
you're good.
It's such a, it's like you are always kind of this godlike figure. You are like, you write for a divine peace inside of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really kind of spilling out into this community work, hearing even just like before when we were talking about A Nation in Exile, you were like, this inspired me because I personally know people who were exiled from their communities in foreign countries that fled here because of their writing. You're like, this is what inspired me to do all this.
Yeah.
So it's just like now you're really putting these like actual programs together to like get writers here, put kind of more attention on them that could help like save them. Is just such, it's godlike. It really is.
I think I have a tension with saying godlike, only because when I hear God, which I love God, don't get me wrong, but I also hear the two gods, right? Like there's the like real God in which we live and have our being and is in all of us, and beautiful and love and unconditional love itself. And then there's like supremacist God in which you're like godlike, like you control things, right? Which we know we're not.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it more of like this space of love.
Yes. That I can definitely 100%.
Yeah,
say.
no.
Yeah.
It's not this, but I don't look at, I guess to clarify, I don't really look at God as one that's like so controlled.
Good.
I look at God as just like a loving being.
Yes.
And like the people that are so like structured in a way of like, I have to do what God said, like so like that. To me, it's actually unlike God. That are like condemning.
Yes.
So I don't say it, I actually say it in the complete opposite way.
Beautiful. Love that. Love that.
But it is good it's good clarification because that word God holds so much power to people and it can go two ways. But I've just been reading a lot of your work recently and I know your feelings towards it. So I feel connected to the work that you write in terms of spirituality and the way you view the world in spirituality. So I just think that that's such a unique thing about you, and that's why I say that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
But I actually, now that we're just kind of on this topic, like how did the spirit get to you? Like how did you get on this path with the universe? You know what I mean? Because I know you're not from Kansas City. You said you're from Brooklyn. Tell me just a little bit about like your background. Like, did you grow up with faith? How did it kind of stem into your life? If it fell, how did you get it back? Because it is such an important part of your work.
Yeah, it is. I would say it's the center of my work. So I was born in Brooklyn, was raised there till I was about 9.5, moved to Florida and lived there for too long. But when I was about 8 years old, so my mother was a Christian, and she was also a person who like really honored just me. Like she honored in the sense of saying she honored free will, right? Like she honored me to be who she really wanted me to be, who I was meant to be, kind of thing. And when I was 8, we used to go to like Haitian churches, which like love my Haitian folks, sac passe, my Haitian churches were a lot for me when I was 8 years old. like it was just like very like ecstatic faith, ecstatic religion, very like speaking in tongues, falling on the floor, all of these things. And something in me when I was 8 brought me to my mother begging to not have to go to church again. And I was like, I don't wanna, don't make me. And my mom was like, okay, like, because she used to force us every Sunday to go to church, and since then I was kind of living this life of like, God is a fact. Like I've actually never not believed in God. I've always known God to be true, real, and like all of these things. I think my relationship with God has changed over time. But God is a fact, and God tells me, love God, love others. There we go. I got it. I
Yeah.
got the whole picture right there. And so I lived my life like that for a very long time. And fast forward to college, I had my first actual psychotic break. And it happened while I was taking this class and this one semester. And, I became obsessed with like being in a college classroom studying postmodernism and like hearing all of these people talking about like, oh, there's no source, like, oh, just kind of like talking around God, but like committing to nihilism and the non-existence of God. And that was pissing me off. And I was like, I'm going to reconcile the intellectual mind of man with God. Like, I'm going to do that. And so I started reading the Bible in 3 different languages and like studying astrophysics and like doing all of this crazy shit. And I broke my brain, lo and behold. And so, I like, then I had to pick up the pieces from that. And the psychosis that I go through, because this is actually, psychosis is deeply tied in my story of faith. The psychosis that I've gone through is actually religious trauma. Is actually like the when we were talking about like this, like demanding, condemnatory spirit that is like, do this, do that, the slave driver, if you will. That is white supremacist God, and that is like the nature of psychosis for me, right? And so like it's always like there's been days in the midst of psychosis where I'm like clinging to my Bible, fighting with God. At a certain point, I opened the Bible, was reading it, and every evil thing was me, and I could not see that. And so yeah, it's been a knockdown, drag out sort of path and journey where I had to figure out my faith for myself. I had it because like even though I had asked when I was 8 to not go to like church, I still went to churches, right? I just started going to white churches with friends of mine and stuff like that. And like
non-denominational
like
type.
non-denominational type, like drinking warm soda as a challenge during youth ministries type, like
Yeah.
like just I don't know. That's a very poignant like specific memory. But so I was like in and out of church and stuff like that, always just kind of seeking for what felt right. And I don't even know if I had the words to say I was seeking for what felt right. I was just going around because I believed, and I kind of liked that thing. But yeah, then I had to come to fisticuffs with like white supremacist God, and then I left Christianity for a while. And I would tell people I left Christianity because I love Jesus, and I was like, I gotta find Jesus because this ain't it for me, right? And so yeah, I was kind of on this journey. I joined I joined a cult. I also like lived out of a van with some hippies living in the woods.
Is that because I read that on your website too? Was that the cult? Or that was just a different...
Those are the 2 different things. Okay. Like living in a van with hippies and a cult. The cult is like a cult.
I didn't know if it like led that that experience led to one or the other into each other.
There's times where they did bleed in. Like I was like living in the woods with some friends, and I had another break, and I was like, I need to find God. And I was like, the last people I remember who like dedicated their lives to God was this cult, so bring me back to this cult. So like it was touch and go for a while there.
Okay.
And it was just a deep journey of seeking, honestly, and emptying myself a lot. Like that. One of the reasons why I don't like take anything for granted, honestly, is because I've lost everything at some point in my life. My mental faculties, right? My ability to think straight, right? My ability to reason and feel and have internal direction. My emotions, I've lost. Like everything that makes a person, I've lost before. Things that people take for granted, right? And so like because that's another thing that also like is the underlying nature of my faith, is like, oh, I wasn't the person who put it there in the first place. Like somehow I had it and somehow I didn't, right? Yeah. And so like, yeah, my relationship with God now is a very like practical one. It's both practical, tangible, and real. No one can and no one, honestly, it's not for anyone to like comment on or like try to convince me of anything else kind of thing, because like the thing I know is if you're trying to convince me of something, you're not listening to what I'm saying or taking any stock in what I'm saying, right? Like my faith in God is so big that I don't have to convince anyone of anything at all, because God is everywhere. Like,
yeah, God is
like,
literally everything.
yeah.
I know, it's kind of crazy to me when people go against that thought, because I'm like, but everything was made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is God if everything
Yeah.
is made. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really resonate with that. So have you always written? There's so many things, by the way, that I could dive into what you just said.
Yeah. We could go anywhere.
I know, but I'm going to keep it on the poetry.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there. And I don't mean to breeze past any of that,
It's
because all those things are a part of you.
Yeah.
And it seems, knowing you is just like, this writing is kind of this writing about your faith is the needle that sews you kind of back together again when you go down and get back up, and when you're up, you know what I mean?
Yep. Definitely.
So I want to like just even dive deeper into that. So I heard that you started writing poetry when you were 12. Who introduced you to poetry? Like, how did that needle get sewn into you?
Oh, so it was 7th grade. Okay, picture this. 7th grade. I'm in a really dark place, right? And I think this is in other interviews and stuff, but I'm in a really dark place because my oldest sister, Sophia, committed suicide when I was in 7th grade.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was really sad. It was really hard too, because no one was sympathetic at that time. My mom was dealing with it, obviously, so she was in her own world, and working also at the same time. My mom was one of those single moms who worked 3 full-time jobs to put food on the table, and then also dealing with the suicide of her oldest daughter. And then my sisters were in their own worlds. The school therapist was like a bitch. And then the kids were horrible about it. Like, they would tell me my sister's going to hell, like all this shit that I did not need to hear at the time. And so I'm in this dark place, and a teacher, just as a assignment, right? It wasn't even anything pointed, right? Puts Still I Rise in front of me, right? By Maya Angelou. And I'm reading this text that I had never seen before. And it was the weirdest thing. Like, I'm reading, like, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise, right? And like, something in me started to go, and I knew it was because I was reading these words.
Yeah.
It was like incantation, you know? It was magic. It was communication, right? It was what we do for each other on a daily basis that I first encountered through the page, right? And I was like, and back then I was obsessed with saving the world. Like, I was crazy about it. And so like, I was like, this is how I'm going to help people. This is how I'm going to save people.
Because
Poetry.
you felt saved.
Yeah. Yes. I learned.
And
that.
what a incredible. I love hearing that story about teachers.
Yeah.
That she introduced you almost.
Yeah.
Well, she did.
Yeah, she did.
Did you look up Maya Angelou after that?
Or
just those words, and then you kind of carried them through your life?
I kind of carried them, but then like, no, I definitely became obsessed with Maya Angelou. I didn't realize until 2 nights ago how obsessed I am with Maya Angelou, because someone said something real wrong about Maya Angelou, and I was like, oh, I didn't know I felt this deeply about it. But I studied Maya Angelou, learned all about her. She became like a very, guiding light in my life, you know?
Yeah. And so when you get pulled away, what does it look like going back to like faith in writing for you? Like, how do you, like, if someone was in that space, in that dark space, how do you get reconnected? How do you get back?
So to be real, to be very
you're
real,
like, I don't know.
like, yeah, like, no, this is a really good question, because I think the answer, one I want to name, the answer might be different for everybody,
And it probably is. But I'm
for
curious for
me,
you.
Black luminaries,
Okay.
like straight up, like Black folks in America or other places who wrote, who sang, who danced, who told stories, who acted. Like, whenever, literally every time since I've lived in Kansas City, I think I've had 2 or 3 psychotic breaks. They like come in spurts, but like all clustered. Like, so it's hard to say how many they are, but every time I'm in the dredges, like, there's no words except the books that I'm trying to write about it to explain the hell that I've been in. But anyway, every time I'm in that bottom, I start to listen to spoken word poems, watch documentaries, listen to lectures of Black luminaries. And what happens is I start to find a reorientation within myself, a grounding and a clarity that went away, and it has come back through their words. And this is like, there's like essays I'm working on right now that has to do with this, but it's like, in the Bible, there's a verse, the stone that the builder rejected shall become the head cornerstone. And like in Christian and like white supremacist Christianity, they're like, this is Jesus and only Jesus. That's who Jesus was. That's why he was the Messiah. But no, right? Jesus looked to his disciples and was like, you're the light of the world, right? Like, and it's this thing of recognizing when you are a marginalized population, you are deprived of every good thing, right? And because of you, a hole is dug in you. And that hole is the shape and texture of everything you know is right, good, and true, right? Like when you're seeking for love, for instance, and you can understand this, when you're seeking for love, it is actually upon you to give that love, because you know what it is, because that hole is the shape of the love inside of you, so you know it better than anyone, so it's yours to give, right? So the thing that you need the most is ours to produce. Yes, right. And so when in the Bible it says the stone that the builder rejected shall become the head cornerstone, it's like anybody who's been disenfranchised by an entire society knows what is needed for a good society to exist, right? Because they know what they went without, so yeah, Black luminaries brings me back to life every time.
Well, you are a Black luminary. You really are. And especially like this book really does talk about, so was this your debut book?
My chapbook. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was this the first, I know it wasn't the first thing that was published of your work, but was this the first like book form piece that came out?
Yes.
Okay. So it's called Birthing Pains.
Yeah.
And really, I feel that this is actually the first time I'm seeing, I think, the cover of it, because I read it on what the bookstore gave me. But so I read it online.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see it just like in your hand. It's really cute. What is this cover first?
So I actually didn't choose the cover. My publisher did.
Okay.
But the moment I saw it, I was like, this is the only cover that it could have ever been. But it's a phoenix.
I was going to say it's a phoenix rising.
Yeah.
And you wrote that. There was a piece in your book about that.
Yeah.
I forget which poem it was. But this whole piece, I was curious at first to read it because birthing pains, I'm going through pregnancy. But really, you use this title as almost as a metaphor to rebirth yourself into the person. So that's why you are a Black luminary in this community for people that are in that dark space. This book could be something that someone goes out and reads and helps them refine themselves and get like reconnected to the faith. Because when I was reading it, there were just like certain words that came to me that I wanted to share with you. Please. Because it was so just a piece of connection within oneself. So I said oneness, a searching with a finding, a lostness and a found, hope, inclusion, sense of light, earthly versus eternal, grounding within a knowing. And I was just curious, what else would you say about this? Like when you wrote it in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
came out in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole thing in itself
Mm-hmm.
to write something that's so relevant and put it out within that time period. Do you still feel connected with it? Like what, when you hold this, what does it feel?
Let me hold it. Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I wrote this book, I had just gone through a week of mourning. Because you know how, like, 2020 brought, obviously, COVID. But in the midst of
It
COVID,
did? I don't even remember.
But in the midst of COVID, there were these, like, waves of things that were happening in, like, the public sphere, right? Like, you know, there was a wave of, like, the resurgence of the Me Too movement. There was a wave of, specifically the week of mourning that birthed this book was the wave of the Epstein situation and like
Okay.
child abuse and things like this, right? And for me, you want to know how to activate my demon side? Hurt a child, and see what I can do.
Yeah.
You know. So I was in a week of mourning, like in bed, pounding on the floor, would not leave my room, crying out to God, like, because I was seeing all these metaphors, but I was also just feeling a lot of the, like,
You just feel a lot of life that's happening around
yeah,
you. Like you are an empath
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I guess, yeah. But so I actually yeah, I did that. I was watching This Is Us. This Is Us used to be a spiritual experience for me.
I know that's what you wrote in your intro.
Yeah. And you know, in the intro it talks about that scene with the horse and stuff like that. Literally, I got up after watching that scene, the clouds parted in me, got up and wrote that first essay, right? And that was the beginning of the process of putting this book together, writing this book. So what I feel to this with this book right now is, one, on a kind of like shallow level, it's the first thing. I won't say this shallow, just like there's a lot of depth to a lot of things, a lot of layers, but like you scratch the first layer and it's like I did a thing, right? Like I'm very happy to have done this very thing because it showed me that I can do this thing again.
Yes,
Right?
of course.
Like that was the big thing for me. Like as far as just like a very simple, like, I can put a book together. I can do this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then it was like, yeah, I was working through a lot of concepts, as you said, right? Like oneness, resurrection. There's a poem in here called Rebirth, you know, and even the like structure of the book, it starts in the darkness. Like one of my eternal themes that you'll find, I think, in every work till from now till forever, till I die, is like the journey from darkness to light.
Yeah. That was a very big theme.
Yeah. And so like, so that's a continual thing that I do in all of my work. And you know, you asked if I still feel connected with this book. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, ugh. Like old
I feel
news.
that.
Like,
I feel that.
I'm a little embarrassed sometimes to tell people I have this chapbook. I'm not gonna lie.
No, don't be.
And I know I shouldn't be. Truly, I do. Because this was the best I had for that moment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I've grown since that moment, you know? And and both are true, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, this book is raw, right? It is like before Melissa, pre-MFA Melissa, you know? It's a pre-Poet Laureate Melissa, you know? But it's
and it's crazy. It's not that long ago.
Exactly. It's not that long ago.
It's
True.
crazy how much you can change in
Yes.
such a short amount of time.
Honestly.
When you are working at your craft.
Honestly. And I mean, in 2020, I was a teacher, right? And I literally left teaching saying, I can't do it like this. I am going to reach these kids, but I'm going to do it as me. And I have to figure that out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, yeah, I decided to become a full-time poet in the middle of a pandemic. So, you know, yeah. Yeah, so I love this book for what it was and what it, and still even what it is, because it shows me my growth. And also, I'm always like, this book came out in the middle of a pandemic, so I never like toured with it. It's a chat book, so it's like what I think of as chat books is our little like hidden things. Like once we get our
Yeah.
debut book, we're like, oh, we had chat books, what? Like, but no, it's a
That's why you had to point out,
yeah.
it's not my debut book. It's my debut chat book, bitch.
I haven't debuted my full length yet. That's what I'm working on right now. But no, this is a thing that I have a lot of love for, and I'm always surprised when someone reads it and like first reads it, but then also like I guess I shouldn't be surprised because I know the heart that went into this. Everything you said is right? Like because you got it, right? Like that's how it impacted you. And also I know the spirit in which I wrote this thing. And I don't want to desecrate that.
It really, I think within it is just like it really opens your eyes to like the work. You're not necessarily saying like how to do the work, but you're saying like this is the work, going deep within yourself, finding what makes you you and bringing it out, like that inner, you talk a lot about that inner child within you. And I know that's kind of maybe a trendy thing right now in the world of just like this therapy talk of just
love it though.
Yeah, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's like you really do have to like go so within yourself to find out who you were, because life just inputs all these things into your mind and like society just is constantly talking at you. You get lost that you just don't remember who you set out to be.
Yeah.
But when you're a child, you are your most innocent version and probably most true because there's not a lot of influence in your life yet. So that's why I think it was just a beautiful reflection of that throughout each piece you wrote in.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
And I mean it was 4 years ago, but it's still a part of you.
Yeah.
And I think books like that always will, because I feel the same way with my book. I'm like, first thing I wrote, first thing that like got me back into like kind of saving myself with writing, that I just ended up putting a collection together and getting it out because I was just like, how powerful is that?
Yeah.
To just like have writing help save you.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, I don't necessarily feel connected to all these pieces anymore, but I love that people can still get connected.
Exactly, because
it exists for others.
Exactly. So
now
the beautiful thing about your inner child that I don't know if it's often talked about, or I don't know if I often hear other people talking about it, but someone is your inner child. Your inner child is not just the child that you were. It's a child that someone actually is right now somewhere else, right? And what I mean by that is like, if I grew up a young, black, fat girl in the projects of Brooklyn, feeling like she didn't belong and trying to fit in and just utilizing her intelligence and her strength, thinking those were the only two good things about her, and thus trying to like on the path of killing herself mentally, internally, by trying to prove so hard her strength, or trying to prove so hard her intelligence, right? And I know that path that led me to what else happened. Whenever I'm speaking to that child in me, there are 10, 15, 20, 30 other children who are going through that same thing.
Yeah.
And there are adults who were those children who don't get to speak to them with such love and tender care, like who don't have that voice in the back of their head that's nurturing that child back to health, right? So every time you're honoring your inner child, you're honoring the children who are living the same positionality that you were living in.
Yeah. I also love this thought of you are who you are inside your heart and chest and not your mind, like because your chest is kept captive. There's no inputs, but in your mind you have eyes, nose, mouth, ears, like everything is coming in. So like you truly are your heart. And like, so when you are trying to find that inner child, think with your heart, feel it here and not your mind. Which the untethered soul that book. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I have it on my bookshelf. I try to read it at a bad time. Maybe I'll go back to it another
Yeah,
time.
you should, because that message always stuck with me through that book. But speaking of books and words, I really would love to end on you putting you on the spot.
Okay, I love it.
So you can read something from Birthing Pains if you want, but you might not want to, or you might want to. I don't know. It can be whatever you want.
Okay, so all right. I'm going to actually bounce this back to you, right? So
Okay.
would you like to hear something more recent? Or you pointed out before we got onto camera what one of your favorites were. Would you rather hear me read that one?
I think maybe just because you're talking about how it's not as connected with you right now, let's hear something new.
Okay, cool. Then we're going to pull out the
The
old
phone.
So that's what we do out here in 2024.
Yeah. And because I would love to encourage people to like buy this, read this, get it for themselves. Maybe I'll tease something in the preview, but let's hear something that you're really connecting with today.
For sure.
Because we're in the moment.
Look, we're here. This is where we're at, right? So yeah, this poem, I'm really curious about how bodies carry stories, and like how bodies not only carry stories but carry lessons.
Did you read that book?
Oh,
My Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, so I haven't read it, but I
read it earlier this year.
And how was it?
I was a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, like first chapter bawling. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah. So this poem is called Bulbous. It's written in 6 parts. But there's 6 couplets. Well, not 6 couplets. There's 6 sets of couplets. And the poetic form is called a duplex, which I'm not going to give the lesson now on what a duplex is, but it
looks like little
there's
2-line poems.
Yeah. So Bulbous 1. When I say I am fat, standing in your parlor, I stand tall in that parlor. As you close doors and shut blinds, you blind, shut, closed, tell me fatness is not meant for lawns, porches, mountaintops. Forget a fat lawn, a fat porch, a fat mountain. Find your home in the den of groundhogs. You tell me my home is buried. You call me comfort and cushion. You call me matron and Buddha. Anything but fat. You beg this body anything but. It is fat, I said. 2. This fat is not one in which I seek pride, but courage to believe I belong. I belong in courage, even as I hide my tears in the night tears unhidden by Mother Earth's comforting girth. Earth's girth births ecosystems. No one can palm the weight of her surface, her depths unfathomed and unheld. All the demons she too has swallowed, demons swallowed in the name of love, unraveled in her core's gravitational pull unravels my fat's prideful seeking 3. You do not wait for me to expunge that seared unto my underbelly are my underbelly creeks, a grand canyon bottom, a grand rift bottom, l'eau de vie rolls on and wards away shallow waters who beg for the life the moon attracts between my rubbing thighs that love the moon to sliver as tides rise, risen tides pulse in my patient veins, my veins that do not wait for whatever you must expunge. 4. An invisible hand stuffs its fingers down my throat. I am led to more consumption.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Leave me a review on your favorite listening channel, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I'd love to hear from you. Always with love, A.
Casts a chastity belt Adam Eve's, my sexes cleft, my initials engraved chase, chase engraved becomes me, unsilts my earthen body, soiled by corporation, a visible hand clenches my throat. 5. What do I know of making love except to see the manure in my friends' lives? Seeing my friends shit, I point to the blossoms bloom. The blossoms bloom is not the fruit, but what do I know of birth? Birth boasts a knowing. I am here. Here I am in courage. What do I know of courage? Known courage necessitates choice. I must now choose what I know of making love. 6. I tell you I am fat, and I do not wait. Forbear this weight without sympathy and concern. Fallen eyes and knitted brow, redirection and befuddlement, beefed up and direction toward the else and other things I am. The thing I am saying is I cannot sit in this chair. This chair will break, and I am tired of weak arms, arms that cannot hold me when I tell you I am fat.
Woo! So beautiful.
Yes,
Poet
yes.
laureate. What was the title of that?
Bulbous.
Bulbous. What does that mean?
Bulbous means like big and
Okay.
yeah.
Such beautiful work and
Yes.
so vulnerable. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for sharing and being
Yes,
here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm going to give you a hug.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, that was the best. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Leave me a review on your favorite listening channel, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I'd love to hear from you. Always with love, A.